Dr. Samantha Reid knew that calls at 5 in the morning never brought good news. She grabbed the phone from her nightstand, not fully awake yet. "Doc, you need to get to the McFarland Ranch immediately." Sheriff Jack Turner's voice trembled with tension. "We've got a wild Mustang here that attacked 2 cowboys. One's in the hospital with broken ribs." Samantha sat up sharply in bed. "Attacked? Jack, wild Mustangs don't attack people without reason. This one does. The ranch owners say he's gone crazy. We have orders to put him down, but we wanted you to take a look first. You've got 30 minutes before the team with rifles arrives." Samantha's heart sank. In 15 years working as a veterinarian in Mountain, Montana, she had saved hundreds of animals, but talk of killing always tore at her soul. "I'm on my way." She was already pulling on jeans and her work jacket. 20 minutes later, her red pickup truck with veterinary equipment pulled up to the McFarland Ranch. The place looked like it had been hit by a hurricane. Broken pen boards, scattered tools, hoof prints in the dust. Jack Turner stood by the fence with 3 cowboys, all keeping their hands away from the pen. "He's over there." The sheriff pointed to a distant corner where something was moving behind the barn. Samantha took binoculars and saw him. A large bay Mustang with a scar across his entire muzzle. The horse wasn't standing still, but walking in circles, constantly looking toward the forest beyond the pen. His behavior was strange, not aggressive, but rather desperate. "Tell me exactly what happened," she asked. "A cowboy named Rick rubbed his bandaged arm. We were trying to drive him to the main pen. The horse was calm until we started moving east, toward the forest. Then he went crazy and charged at us. Almost trampled Mike." "East?" Samantha looked through the binoculars again. The Mustang continued walking in circles, but his eyes were focused on one point, the dense spruce forest beyond the pen. "Yes, toward the forest." "It seemed like he didn't want us going there," added another cowboy. Suddenly the horse stopped and whinnied, not from anger, but something like a call. He was looking directly at Samantha, as if trying to tell her something. "This isn't aggression," she muttered to herself. "He's protecting someone." "What did you say?" Jack stepped closer. Samantha lowered the binoculars, her heart beating faster. "Give me 10 minutes alone with him. I think this horse is trying to show us something." "Doc, that's too dangerous," the sheriff objected. "It's more dangerous to kill him without understanding why he's acting so strangely." Samantha was already walking toward the pen gate. "If I'm right, this Mustang might save someone's life." The Mustang stood motionless, watching her approach. His dark eyes held something she had rarely seen in wild animals, desperation mixed with hope. Every instinct told her that behind his protective behavior lay a secret that could change everything. As she reached for the gate latch, the horse took a step toward the forest and looked back at her, as if inviting her to follow. In that moment, Samantha knew she was about to discover something that would test everything she believed about the bond between humans and wild animals. Samantha slowly opened the gate, keeping her movements deliberate and calm. The Mustang, who the cowboys had been calling Storm, stood about 50 feet away, his muscles tense but not poised to attack. His ears flicked forward as she stepped inside, a sign of curiosity rather than aggression. "Easy, boy," she whispered, pulling a handful of sweet feed from her jacket pocket. "I'm here to help." Storm took 2 steps toward her, then stopped. His nostrils flared, testing her scent. Samantha noticed something the cowboys had missed. The horse was favoring his left front leg, and there were fresh scratches along his flanks, as if he'd been running through thick brush. Behind her, she heard Jack's radio crackle. "Tanner, this is dispatch. The marksman team is en route. ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's all she had. Storm whinnied again, that same desperate call she'd heard earlier. Then he did something that made Samantha's breath catch. He took 3 deliberate steps toward the forest, looked back at her, and waited. "You want me to follow you?" she said quietly. It wasn't a question. The horse bobbed his head once, as if he understood every word. Samantha had worked with horses long enough to know that this level of communication was extraordinary, especially with a wild Mustang who should be terrified of humans. She pulled out her radio. "Jack, I'm going into the forest with him." "Absolutely not. Samantha, get out of there now." But she was already following Storm toward the tree line. The Mustang moved carefully, checking over his shoulder every few steps to make sure she was still behind him. His limp was more pronounced now, but he pressed on with determination that spoke of urgency. As they entered the dense spruce forest, the temperature dropped noticeably. Branches caught at Samantha's jacket, and the thick canopy above blocked most of the morning light. Storm navigated the terrain with the confidence of familiarity. He'd been here before, many times. After 10 minutes of hiking deeper into the woods, Storm stopped at a small clearing. He whinnied softly, then stepped aside, as if presenting something to Samantha. That's when she saw her, a young mare, probably no more than 3 years old, lying on her side beneath a fallen pine log. Her breathing was shallow, labored, and her swollen belly told the story immediately. She was heavily pregnant and in distress. "Oh my God!" Samantha breathed, dropping to her knees beside the mare. The horse's coat was damp with sweat, her eyes glazed with pain. Storm moved to her head, nuzzling her gently and making soft, comforting sounds. Samantha's hands moved quickly, checking vital signs. The mare's pulse was rapid and weak, her temperature elevated, but it was the position of the foal that made Samantha's heart sink. She could feel the abnormal presentation through the mare's abdomen. Breech birth, and from the looks of it, the mare had been in labor for hours. "That's why you wouldn't let them near the forest," she whispered to Storm. "You've been protecting her." The radio on her belt crackled with Jack's increasingly frantic voice. "Samantha, the marksman team is here. If you don't come out in 5 minutes, we're coming in after you." She keyed the radio with shaking hands. "Jack, I need you to call Dr. Morrison at the emergency vet clinic. Tell him to bring a mobile surgical unit to the forest access road, east side of the McFarland property. And bring ropes. We're going to need to carry a horse out of here." "What the hell are you talking about?" Storm wasn't attacking anyone, Jack. He was protecting his mate. "She's in labor and she's dying." There was a long pause. Then, "Jesus, how long do we have?" Samantha looked at the mare's condition, calculating rapidly. Without immediate intervention, they would lose both mother and foal within the hour. "Not long enough," she said grimly. Storm whinnied urgently, as if sensing her assessment. He looked between Samantha and his mate, his dark eyes pleading. In that moment, Samantha realized this wasn't just about saving 2 horses. It was about proving that love and loyalty existed in the wild just as powerfully as in the human world. Dr. Morrison's mobile unit arrived at the forest edge faster than Samantha had dared hope. She could hear the diesel engine and voices through the trees as Jack led the veterinary team toward their location. Storm's ears pricked at the approaching sounds, and he moved protectively closer to his mate. But he didn't bolt. "Over here," Samantha called out, not taking her hands off the laboring mare. The horse's condition had worsened in the past 20 minutes. Her breathing was becoming more erratic, and Samantha could feel the foal's movement growing weaker. Dr. Morrison crashed through the underbrush carrying a field surgical kit, followed by 2 veterinary technicians with a portable ultrasound machine. Jack and 3 ranch hands brought up the rear with ropes and a makeshift stretcher. "What's the situation?" Morrison asked, immediately dropping beside the mare and checking her vitals. "Breech presentation. Probably been in labor for 6 to 8 hours, Samantha reported quickly. Mare's showing signs of exhaustion and shock. Foal's heart rate is dropping. Morrison's face grim as he performed a quick examination. "We need to get her out of here and into surgery immediately. The foal's positioned completely wrong. If we don't act fast, we'll lose them both." Storm watched the strangers surrounding his mate with obvious anxiety, but something in Samantha's presence seemed to calm him. When she placed a gentle hand on his neck, he didn't shy away. "How do we move her without causing more trauma?" asked one of the techs. "Very carefully," Morrison replied, already preparing sedatives. "We'll need to stabilize her first, then use the canvas stretcher." As Morrison worked to sedate the mare, Samantha noticed Storm's behavior becoming more agitated. He kept looking toward the deeper forest, his ears swiveling as if listening for something the humans couldn't hear. "There's something else," she murmured to Jack. "Storm keeps looking that way. What if there are more horses out there?" Jack frowned. "More horses? This forest borders 3 different properties. If there's a wild herd living here, and we're about to remove their lead mare." Before Jack could respond, a distant whinny echoed through the trees. Then another. Storm answered immediately, his call carrying both reassurance and warning. "We've got company," Jack said grimly, and moving instinctively to his sidearm. Through the trees, Samantha counted at least 6 shapes moving toward them, wild Mustangs, their coats gleaming in the filtered sunlight. They moved with the caution of wild animals, but the determination of a family protecting their own. "Nobody moves suddenly," Morrison said quietly, still working to prepare the mare for transport. "Wild horses won't typically charge humans, but they might if they think we're threatening one of their own." Storm stepped forward to meet the approaching herd, engaging in a complex series of whinnies and body language that Samantha found fascinating. The lead stallion, a magnificent black horse with battle scars across his chest, stopped about 30 feet away and studied the scene. "He's explaining what's happening," Samantha whispered in awe. "Storm's telling them we're here to help." The black stallion approached slowly, his dark eyes fixed on the unconscious mare. 2 younger horses flanked him, while the others maintained a protective circle around the clearing. When the stallion saw the mare's condition, he let out a low, mournful sound. "Her father," Morrison said quietly, recognizing the family dynamics. "That's her sire, and Storm's been accepted into this family group." The veterinary team worked with practiced efficiency, sliding the canvas stretcher beneath the sedated mare. The wild horses watched every movement but didn't interfere. Storm stayed close to his mate's head, occasionally nuzzling her and making soft, reassuring sounds. "Okay, on my count," Morrison directed. 1, 2, 3, lift." The mare was heavier than expected, and the uneven ground made the trek back to the vehicles treacherous. Halfway to the forest edge, one of the ranch hands stumbled, and the stretcher lurched dangerously. Storm whinnied sharply in alarm, and immediately 2 of the wild horses moved in to steady the stretcher with their heads, supporting their family members' weight until the humans regained their footing. "Did you see that?" Jack breathed. "They're helping us carry her," Samantha said, tears stinging her eyes. At the forest edge, Morrison's surgical unit was already set up, a mobile operating theater that could handle emergency procedures. As they loaded the mare into the unit, Storm tried to follow, but the space was too small. "We'll take good care of her," Samantha promised him. But Storm's distressed whinnying told her he didn't understand why he was being separated from his mate. Morrison checked his watch. "Surgery will take at least 2 hours, maybe 3 if there are complications. The foal's position is..." He paused, seeing Storm's anxious pacing. "It's going to be close." As the surgical unit's doors closed, Storm let out a heartbreaking cry that was answered by the entire herd. They formed a vigil around the vehicles, waiting for news that would determine the fate of their family. 2 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Storm had settled into a position directly beside the mobile surgical unit, his head pressed against the metal wall as if trying to hear what was happening inside. The rest of the herd maintained their protective circle, but their anxiety was palpable, ears constantly swiveling, occasional nervous whinnies, restless pawing at the ground. Samantha sat on a fallen log nearby, watching Storm's vigil with growing respect. She'd seen devoted pet dogs, loyal ranch horses, but this level of emotional connection in a wild animal was extraordinary. Every few minutes, Storm would lift his head and whinny softly at the surgical unit, as if calling to his mate. "How's it looking in there?" Jack asked, approaching with coffee from the ranch house. "Morrison hasn't come out in over an hour," Samantha replied, accepting the warm cup gratefully. With breech births, silence usually means they are working hard to save both mother and foal. As if summoned by her words, the surgical unit's door opened and Dr. Morrison stepped out, his surgical scrubs stained with blood and sweat. His expression was unreadable as he pulled off his gloves. Storm immediately stood and moved toward him, his entire body tense with anticipation. The black stallion also stepped forward, his intelligent eyes fixed on the veterinarian's face. "The foal is alive," Morrison announced, and Samantha felt her knees go weak with relief. A beautiful filly, strong despite the difficult birth. But that single word made Storm's ears flatten against his head. The mare lost a lot of blood. She's stable now, but the next few hours are critical. She needs complete rest and careful monitoring. The question is... Morrison looked directly at Storm. "Where can she recover safely?" "The ranch has facilities," Jack offered, but Morrison was shaking his head. "She's a wild horse. The stress of captivity could kill her even if her body heals. But she can't travel back to the forest for at least a week, maybe 2. Storm began pacing again, his distress evident. He approached the surgical unit and whinnied urgently, as if demanding to see his mate and new foal. "Let him see her," Samantha said suddenly. "Just for a moment. He needs to know she's alive." Morrison hesitated. The foal is very fragile, and the mare is still sedated. 5 minutes, Samantha pressed. "Look at him, document. He's been protecting her for hours, maybe days. He deserves to see what he fought so hard to save." Morrison opened the surgical unit side door wider, creating a space just large enough for Storm to put his head inside. The wild stallion moved forward cautiously, his nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of his mate and newborn foal. What Samantha witnessed next would stay with her forever. Storm's entire demeanor changed from anxiety to wonder as he saw the tiny filly standing on wobbly legs beside her mother. The mare was awake now, weak but alert, and when she saw Storm, she nickered softly in greeting. The foal, barely an hour old, looked up at Storm with bright, curious eyes. Storm extended his muzzle gently, touching the filly's nose in the most tender gesture Samantha had ever seen from a wild animal. "She's beautiful," Samantha whispered, tears streaming down her face. Storm spent exactly 5 minutes with his family before stepping back, as if understanding that his mate needed rest. But something had changed in his posture. The desperate anxiety was replaced by calm determination. He walked directly to Samantha and did something that made Jack's hand move to his gun. Storm lowered his great head and gently pressed his forehead against her chest. For a long moment, Wild Horse and human stood connected in a gesture of pure trust and gratitude. "Is thanking you," Morrison said quietly. "In all my years of veterinary work, I've never seen anything like this." When Storm finally stepped back, he looked directly into Samantha's eyes, and she understood his message as clearly as if he'd spoken. "Take care of them. We need a solution for recovery," Morrison said, breaking the emotional moment. "Somewhere safe but not confined, where the mare can heal without losing her wild nature." Samantha looked around at the forest edge, the ranch facilities, and the waiting herd of wild horses. An idea began forming in her mind. Crazy, unprecedented, but maybe the only option that would work for everyone. "What if we bring the recovery to her instead of taking her to recovery?" she said slowly. "What do you mean?" Jack asked. "Mobile monitoring. We set up a temporary recovery area right here at the forest edge, close enough to the ranch for medical supplies and power, but open enough that Storm and the herd can stay close. The mare gets the care she needs without losing her freedom." Morrison considered this. It would mean round-the-clock monitoring for at least a week. "I'll do it," Samantha said immediately. I'll take leave from my practice. This family has been through enough. They shouldn't be separated now. Storm seemed to understand her words because he walked over to stand beside her, his massive presence both protective and approving. The black stallion also approached, studying Samantha with ancient, wise eyes before giving what could only be described as a nod of acceptance. "All right," Morrison said with a smile. "I've never set up a field hospital for wild horses before, but there's a first time for everything." As the sun began to set over the Montana mountains, Samantha realized that what had started as a routine emergency call had become something much more profound. A bridge between two worlds, built on trust, courage, and the unbreakable bonds of family. 3 weeks later, Samantha sat in her camp chair beside the makeshift recovery enclosure, watching the most remarkable sight of her career. The filly, now strong and playful, was chasing butterflies around her mother while Storm grazed peacefully nearby. The mare had made a full recovery, her strength returning day by day under Samantha's careful monitoring. The field hospital had become something of a local sensation. Reporters from as far away as Denver had come to document the Wild Horse Sanctuary, as the media had dubbed it. But Samantha barely noticed the attention. Her focus remained entirely on the Mustang family that had changed her life. "Morning, Doc," called Tom McFarland, the ranch owner, approaching with his usual morning coffee offering. Over the past weeks, his attitude toward the wild horses had completely transformed. What started as a nuisance had become a source of pride for his ranch. "How are our patients today?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her. "Ready to go home," Samantha replied, watching as Storm nuzzled his daughter gently. "The mare's completely healed, and the filly is strong enough for travel. It's time." Tom nodded, though his expression showed he'd grown as attached to the horses as everyone else. "The hands are going to miss them. Hell, I'm going to miss them." The wild herd had remained close throughout the recovery period, creating an unprecedented harmony between human and animal worlds. They grazed peacefully near the ranch during the day and returned to the forest each evening, as if understanding the temporary nature of the arrangement. Dr. Morrison arrived for his final examination, his mobile unit pulling up beside the enclosure. Over the weeks, he'd become as invested in the family's welfare as Samantha, often staying longer than necessary just to observe their interactions. "Big day," he said, pulling on his gloves. "Let's make sure everyone's ready for their return to freedom." Storm allowed the examination without restraint now, trusting the humans who had saved his family. The mare stood calmly as Morrison checked her surgical site and vital signs, while the filly pranced around his feet with fearless curiosity. "Perfect healing," Morrison declared. "She's ready for anything the wild can throw at her." As if summoned by his words, the black stallion appeared at the forest edge with the rest of the herd. They had been coming closer each day, as if sensing that reunion was near. Samantha felt her chest tighten with an unexpected emotion. Not sadness, but a profound sense of completion. These 3 weeks had taught her something she'd never learned in veterinary school. Sometimes the greatest healing happened not in sterile clinic rooms, but in the space between wild and tame, where trust bridged two different worlds. The enclosure gate stood open for the first time in 3 weeks. Storm stood at the threshold, his mate and filly beside him, looking between the forest and the humans who had become their unlikely guardians. Samantha approached slowly, her heart pounding with anticipation and loss. In her hands, she carried a small device, a GPS collar designed for research, but modified with a quick-release mechanism. "This is just in case," she explained to Storm, as if he could understand every word. "Perhaps he could. If you ever need help again, we'll be able to find you." Storm lowered his head, allowing her to fasten the lightweight collar around his neck. His dark eyes met hers one final time, and in that gaze, Samantha saw something that would stay with her forever. Not just gratitude, but recognition. They were no longer human and animal, but partners in something larger than either species could achieve alone. The mare approached next, gently touching Samantha's hand with a soft muzzle, a goodbye that needed no words. Then the filly bounded over, full of the fearless energy of youth, playfully tugging at Samantha's jacket pocket before dancing away. Storm whinnied once, a sound that somehow conveyed both farewell and promise. Then, as a family, they walked through the gate toward the waiting herd. The reunion was magical. The black stallion welcomed them back with gentle nickers and protective positioning, while the other herd members surrounded the new family with celebration and relief. For several minutes, the forest edge was filled with the sounds of horses greeting, touching, re-establishing bonds that had never truly been broken. Then, as one, the herd began moving toward the deeper forest. Storm looked back twice, once at the enclosure that had been their safe haven, and once directly at Samantha. She raised her hand in a small wave, understanding that this wasn't goodbye, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in an ongoing story. "Think we'll see them again?" Tom asked, his voice thick with emotion. Samantha smiled, watching as the last of the horses disappeared into the green shadows of the forest. "I know we will. Storm's not the type to forget his friends." 6 months later, Samantha received the call she'd been hoping for. The GPS collar had detected Storm's herd near a neighboring ranch where a young colt had been injured. When she arrived, Storm was waiting, his intelligent eyes asking the same question as before. "Will you help?" And of course, she would. Because some bonds, once forged in crisis and trust, were meant to last a lifetime. The wild Mustang who had taught her the true meaning of family had become family himself, bridging the gap between two worlds with love, loyalty, and an unshakable faith in the goodness that could exist between species. In the end, Storm had been right all along. Sometimes the best way to save a life is to trust in the impossible.